Hey everybody, it's your boy VG Time back again with another video. And this time I'm just going to show you how I, a regular person, uses Linux. A lot of times when you see videos of what people use on Linux, they're showing you a lot of very complicated things and cool stuff, admittedly, especially if you're into techie things, but not really how just a regular person uses Linux. So first I'm going to do is show you some of the apps I use, some alternatives to them, as well as what my system is in general. And then I have a few things I want to talk about as far as distro choice. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to see here is OBS Studio. OBS Studio is the best way to do any kind of recording or streaming, basically, as long as you want to learn what's going on with it. Now, sometimes this is a little bit too much for people. Some people don't really want to go through the effort of setting up scenes and sources and things like that. So an alternative to OBS Studio that I like to show people is Simple Screen Recorder. This right here is an application where you just have to do a few settings and it will basically record your display. It won't record you, but it will record your screen so that if you ever needed to do any kind of tutorials or anything like that, you could do it. But the basic standard is OBS Studio. If I was browser of choice is Firefox. Similar to those Chromium-based browsers, they have extensions. A lot of the most popular extensions are also on Firefox. And it has no issue playing DRM content, which is like your Netflix, Crunchyroll, whatever. And it renders everything pretty good. It comes up pretty fast. I like it. As I mentioned in my previous video, I was very used to the terminal, but you don't actually have to use the terminal to do your software stuff. You know, right here in the GNOME desktop, they have this really nice software store, this visual, and in this particular distro, they tied in their repository in with the software store really well. So that way you're able to search and get different versions of the program. Going back to OBS, for instance, OBS Studio, the one I have installed is the Flathub Flatpak. Just a brief thing about that. Flatpaks are basically contained apps, right? So it's similar to, not exactly, but similar to like an app you would get on a phone or something like that, where everything is kind of just bundled into it and it just works. Now, the other option is that you could get one from the package manager that is built into your distribution. Sometimes you want to have the Flatpak, sometimes you want to have the app from the repository. In the case of OBS Studio, I do suggest the repository app because you get all these add-ons here. You could search all these up and install them manually with the other ones, but because it's just right here, you just click install and it puts it in there. That makes it super convenient. While just to show you the example, if you went with the one that's from just that's packaged in, you won't get that. So Flatpak for that one. You could search for apps. You can see what you have installed. You could update all from here. You don't want to have to worry about using the terminal. Discord. I haven't had any issues with Discord on Linux at all, really. One thing I do suggest is, again, for this one, do the Flatpak or some type of containerized one so that when it needs an update and stuff, you don't have to go through any kind of steps or troubles. But yeah, that's Discord. Steam. Steam is ultimately like how your gaming is ultimately decides what distribution you get, right? If you are running like higher end hardware, more modern hardware, and you need to have the latest and greatest, then you will pick a distribution as towards that. If you have an older system and you don't need the latest and greatest, then you will pick a distribution towards that. But here we are with Steam, my Steam library. This is the primary way in which I play games. There's other ways as well. As I bring up alternatives, you have the Heroic Game Launcher that comes in a lot of gaming distros. I myself never used it. And then of course there is Bottles. Bottles is what you use to run like Windows programs and stuff like that, right? You can also do games through here. If you create new bottles, you can create it for an application or for gaming. And then there's runners and stuff that are in here that you can use to run whatever it is that you got to run. But I have a couple of proprietary pieces of software I have to use for work. I run it through there, they work just fine. Video editor choice right now is Kdenlive. Kdenlive, what I love about it, it's similar to Resolve in that you can grow. As you grow, this grows with you, right? So what I mean by that is that it does so much that you don't need to do in the beginning, that as you gain with your knowledge and you start doing stuff, you don't have to worry about, oh, I hit a wall where I'm no longer able to do what I want to do with my work on this project. I'm pretty sure there's someone who's a professional somewhere where that happens, but I'm not a professional. I just make a YouTube video every now and then. But as I mentioned, a bunch of options for video editors. OpenShot, again, I wouldn't suggest it right now. Linux says it doesn't seem to open. And in fact, it's kind of crazy because the first thing it says is, all kinds of stuff that's not usable with the program. So just keep that in mind. Shotcut is good. It just, I don't like it as much as Kdenlive. Then there is some more like Flowblade. Flowblade looks cool. I haven't tried it out yet. Maybe one day I'll do that. And then Olive is supposed to be like super beginner friendly and all that stuff. But as far as I understood, I didn't think Olive was even still maintained. So something to think about. And yeah. And of course there's the great DaVinci Resolve, but it doesn't work on every distribution easily. So that's why I don't normally put it out there. The people who put it out there usually had to do some effort to make it work. Office suites. There's two main ones. This one right here is only Office. I like it a lot. It has really good compatibility. It does a tab style system, so that's very easy to switch between different projects by just clicking on the tabs. It's pretty lightweight, so that's why I like it. The other option, which comes bundled in a lot of distributions, is LibreOffice. So what's great about LibreOffice is that you could do the entire bundle of LibreOffice, which they have in here where you just download the one thing and it puts everything in there. That's what's right here. It puts everything in there. The other option is that you can just download the individual things you need. Like if you know you're only gonna ever need a writer and a word processor and a spreadsheet, then you just put those two in. If you don't think that you're gonna ever use, like, I don't think I ever used this graphic editor a day in my life. So if that's not something that you're gonna use, then you don't have to use it. If you don't think you're gonna use any database management, then you don't have to put it up there. And if you don't think you're gonna ever do like a PowerPoint, then you don't have to put it up there. But if you need it, you can get it and so forth. So that's one of the things that's pretty cool about LibreOffice. Note taking. So some people are hardcore about their note taking, right? So if you're an Evernote person or a OneNote person and you're wondering what you're going to do as far as those kind of things on Linux, my suggestion is Joplin. Now, there's a bunch of note taking apps, don't get me wrong. There's like entire videos on YouTube about them, but I actually happen to like Joplin. What also is good about Joplin is that you could sync it to your cloud. So if you have OneDrive or Dropbox, you could sync your notebooks up there and then retrieve them later on another device or whatever you want to do. So Joplin, great program. Like I said, there's a bunch of different note-taking programs. One that people bring up that I have yet to get into is Obsidian. Obsidian is, it's like this whole thing where you start linking bits of data to each other and creating a knowledge database, right? Not something I'm really into, but yeah, you got all kinds of note-taking apps in Linux. This one I can't live without. It's LocalSyn. This is a cross-platform airdrop alternative. So if you are, for instance, on an iPhone or you're on an Android phone if you're on an Android phone, there's something a little bit better. But let's say you're on an iPhone and you want to send something to your computer. One of the great things about iOS and even Android to Windows devices or Chromebooks is that you could just press a button and send it over. With local sync, you could do it on both devices, and you could press a button and send something over. And it happens pretty instantaneously as long as they're both on the same Wi-Fi network and Bluetooth and all that good stuff. The distro I'm using right now, I mentioned before I was running CachyOS, and CachyOS is really good, but I went to Pika OS only because CachyOS was doing way more than I needed it to do. This also does more than I needed to do, but it's more so within my skill set. This is Debian based, which means that all the stuff I learned on my Chromebook as far as commands and whatnot translates over to here, and I don't need to learn a new or at least a modified way of doing things. It's on the Bash shell, which I'm familiar with, so that helps out. What makes this better than, like, say, your other Debian-based distributions like Ubuntu and whatnot is that this is pretty up-to-date, pretty bleeding edge, so to speak. It's not quite as much so as Arch, but it still is pretty up-to-date, pretty bleeding edge. So before I mention, distributions I suggest to people based upon where they come from. And I actually, from distro hopping, a little bit that I have been through 4 distributions. Actually, no, I've been through 5 different distributions in the last 4 months. And I realize it's not, when people say that, oh, just choose a distro, it doesn't matter. I get why they say that, right? So if you're a brand new person, that doesn't help you. But what they're meaning is that, well, at least this is what I think they mean, is that the way you interact with your system, regardless of the distribution, could be the same across all your systems. I have used this GNOME desktop on every single version of Linux distribution that I have tried, right? When it was Ubuntu has a modified version of GNOME desktop. When it was CachyOS, I had GNOME desktop, and that's wildly different than Ubuntu. When I was I have Fedora on my laptop. Fedora has the GNOME desktop. And now that I'm on Pika OS, on the GNOME desktop. So my modification is this. I think as a new user, you should use one of the more up-to-date distributions because your system isn't going to be that much larger than, say, Ubuntu or Linux Mint, but you won't have to worry as much about hardware interaction as with Ubuntu or Linux Mint. Try out this Pika OS. Try out CachyOS, which is Arch-based, so it's usually up-to-date and has a lot of support. Try out Fedora, because those are the most up-to-date. Then, once you try them out, what matters more so as far as what your experience is going to be as an end user is the desktop environment. So if you're coming from Mac, go with GNOME desktop because it's the closest thing you're going to get to a Mac-like experience. If you're on Windows and you're coming over, use KDE Plasma. KDE Plasma has very Windows-like interface, and does make sense. If you're using CachyOS, you also have the option of using Cinnamon, which is the interface that is on Linux Mint, and is the one that is most like Windows, but KDE Plasma is also very close to, at least default out the box, like a Windows-like experience. And those are the 2 main things, like GNOME, KDE Plasma. If you're really trying to be cool and more bleeding edge and stuff like that, you could do like Hyperland setups and stuff like that, but I'm talking to the regular person. And lastly, if you have an older system that is, not able to handle a lot of graphical interfaces, then you could try something a little bit more friendly to it, like LQ or XFCE, which are very low resource. They still give you a decent user interface, and you don't have to worry about killing your system. those kind of interfaces could work on 4 gigabytes of RAM type system and only use like, 500 megabytes of RAM. So those are the kind of systems you want to be on for those situations. So anyway, hope this video helped you to show you that you don't have to be like a programmer or a hacker or anything. You can just be a regular, everyday user, just using Linux like a normal person. So that's it. I'll catch you guys again next time. And this is VG Time signing out.